Bienvenue au Téléséminaire international des IREM d'avril. Welcome to the International Téléséminaire of the IREM in April. This will be done in English. Ce sera en anglais, mais je vais prendre des notes dans le chat. We have the pleasure to hear Hock Cheah from the Institute of Pendidikan Guru in Malaysia. Who is going to talk about international developments of research on education. So Bernadette, can you please make a more formal introduction?
Yes, so with pleasure, we thought of this time. So a long time ago, but it took time to organize, and I asked Hock Sensei, who is here, to encourage and to participate at in this workshop like that. So we have difficulties with the language, sure, but I think our activity is very interesting for everyone in GREMA, not only in GREMA, but but for our group with Hock Cheah, and you are our guide, Hock, and we try today to introduce your idea, our idea, and okay, so that's time for you, and Christian will help you, I'm sure. Thank you. You can. So, Christian?
Well, please, you can begin. Thank you very much. So we will be actually hearing a little bit. There will be a roundtable with Masami Soda-san from the University of Tsukuba in Japan, and Arne Jacobsen of the University of Stavanger, who have participated in the topic study group 61 at the last ICME. So yes, please, Hock, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christian and Bernadette. I would like to thank you for your kind invitation so that I could share my thoughts in this very prestigious research group discussion. I shall share my screen. Okay, I've entitled my sharing as the International Cooperation Development in Mathematics Education, the Way Forward. Just a rough introduction of where the four of us come from. There are four of us in our group. Myself, I come from this part of Asia, which is called Southeast Asia. And then we have Masami Isoda Sensei, who comes from Japan. We have Arne Jacobsen, who comes from Norway, just north of France. And of course, we have Bernadette Denise, who is from France. A little bit more about where I come from. This is Southeast Asia, as you may know. I come from Malaysia. In the old days, we called it Malaya. And there is a small island off the west coast here. If you look at the pointer, this is called Penang. This is where I'm from. Of course, there are other parts of Southeast Asia, the French were mainly in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and Laos, that's part of Indochina. The Dutch, they were the Indonesian was a colony of the Dutch, and then the Philippines was a colony of Spain. Next, the question is, how did ICDME start? ICDME, in short, stands for International Cooperation Development in Mathematics Education. It all began at the 14th International Congress on Mathematical Education, ICME 14th, which was held in Shanghai, the 11th to 14th of July in 2021. And the four of us were nominated and appointed to be in the topic study group TSG 61, that is the International Cooperation in Mathematics Education itself, Hock Cheah. Then we have my co-chair, Masami Isoda, and the team members, Arnie Jacobson from University of Stavanger, Bernadette Denise, and then we have one more professor from the Northeast Normal University in China. At the end of this TSG 61, there were some proposals and requests that we should continue our work in TSG 61. And so we decided, the four of us, we met online and we decided that we should continue our work of TSG 61. There were 5 of us in the beginning, but then Professor Han Ji-wei declined to join ICDME. So there you have it. 4 of us continued to work to ICDME. One of the first things we decided to do was to have another conference at Tsukuba. Professor Masami Isoda kindly accepted to be the host of ICDME, the Tsukuba Conference 2022. At the conference, we came together and we put down 4 questions for the participants to guide them in the conference. There were 4 questions. These 4 questions were meant to serve as a guide so that they can focus on the theme of the Tsukuba conference. The 4 questions were what were the issues and challenges in the project, the International Cooperation Project. The second question, how did the partners of the collaboration arrive at strategies to solve issues and challenges in the International Cooperation Project? Question 3, what were the roles and narratives of the agents, and how did they influence the planning and implementation of the project? And the final question is, what were the lessons learned from the project? If you would like to have a better understanding of what happened at the ICDME Tsukuba Conference 2022, you can visit the website. The website address is here, down here, https://www.christchurch.ac.jp/ICDME/2022. Many of the project presentations has also been uploaded on the website. If you visit the website, you can see the presentation slides on the website. Next, we go on to the summary of the presentations at the ICDME Scuba Conference. There were 18 presentations at the ICDME 2022. And out of the 18 presentations we surveyed, and there seems to be two main themes that have emerged from the conference. The first was international cooperation that was presented at the conference was about the sharing of good practices across borders. And the second main theme that emerged was that international cooperation projects that aims to improve mathematics education in transitional and developing economies. In fact, out of these two, most of the projects were focused on the second theme, that is international cooperation that aims to improve mathematics education in transitional and developing economies. Types of international cooperation. From the 18 papers, we saw that there were two types of international cooperation that can be identified. The first one comes under the umbrella of multinational cooperation projects. These are projects that come under the auspices of a big international organization. For example, APEC. APEC is the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and SEAMEO is the Southeast Asia Ministers of Education Organization. The second group of international cooperation that was identified are mainly bilateral international cooperation projects. Some of these projects were across continents, for example, from cooperation between Europe and Africa, cooperation between Europe, America, cooperation between Asia and Africa, and Asia, America. And out of these bilateral projects across the continents, we can see that the recipient countries were mainly from Africa, South America, and Asia. Next, we take a look at the content and the focus areas that were presented at the conference. There were three main areas of international cooperation in mathematics education. The first was in curricular development. The second on professional development, and the third, improving the learning environment for mathematics education. Under the first area of curricular development, we can see that there's a wide area that deals with curricular development. One is curriculum itself. There were attempts to improve curriculum standards, both national and also regional curriculum standards. There was revision of the curriculum. There were also innovations of pedagogies, especially we can see one of them is lesson study. And then technology. There were also attempts to improve the technology part of education in the countries. And in Asia especially, we also see that there was some emphasis in a few countries to improve the teaching resource in the countries, especially centered on textbooks and translations or adaptations of foreign textbooks. If you go to the website, you can see that 3 countries reported this. The first was in Myanmar, where the JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, helped to develop a new textbook for the Myanmar schools. Then there was also the translation of Japanese textbooks in Indonesia. There was some work done there. And the third one was in the country of Papua New Guinea, where JICA was also involved in the translation and the development of the national textbooks. Areas of professional development. We see that professional development is also one of the focus of international cooperation. 2 main parts: capacity building, mainly dealing with building up capacity of faculties. This would involve the tertiary education mainly, that involves in teacher training, the developing of key personnel and faculty. We hear of scholarships being given to some African countries to send their key personnel to further their studies at master's and PhD levels in Europe and also in Canada. Here we also see that there was some work done to help develop pre-service education in Africa. The other side of professional development, which was given some focus, is on CPD, continuous professional development. Here, the focus was mainly on in-service development and developing communities of practice, where people come together and there were communities of researchers and practitioners being formed and built. Next, we look at when we looked at the international cooperation ecosystem that was presented, we saw that the international cooperation ecosystem was indeed a very complex ecosystem. On the left, you can see the different phases where of the projects, mainly starting from proposal and planning of international cooperation projects, moving on to project design, implementation, and impact study. And on the right, you can see that in all these phases, there are agents that are involved. The agents do not come from one singular organization, but they come from several organizations. For example, at the initial proposal and planning stage, we often see the international organizations coming in together with governments and ministries. Then as they move on to the project design and implementation stage, we see other agents coming in to help. International organizations, governments and ministries, and then there are local and foreign universities who come and get involved in the projects. There were local NGOs or non-government organizations and private organizations. Then at the implementation stage, we often see agents meanings coming in from the international organizations, governments and ministries, universities, teachers' colleges, local authority, local NGOs and schools. If we look at this, we can see that the international cooperation project is very much like a multi-level scheme, a network altogether, a multi-level, moving in from the higher level towards the implementation level. And as you move from one level to another, we often see that there's a lot of changes in the types of knowledge that's involved. From the beginning, you can see more theoretical knowledge, and as they move closer down to the implementation stage, there will be a lot of practical knowledge that is involved. Agents coming in at different levels, bringing in different types of knowledge. And this, of course, creates a very complex interaction between the agents. And this is often one of the sources of challenges and issues in international cooperation. Next, we look at the methods of international cooperation projects that are being employed. From the papers that we reviewed, we can see that there are several types of methods that are being used in international cooperation, which are being adopted to achieve the aims of the projects. The first is adoption and adaptation of good practice. The second, development of key personnel or faculties in capacity building. Third one, development of new study programs of courses. This is mainly to help in the certification of in capacity building. Then there is the incorporation and development of local ideas. The fifth is the multilateral dialogue among agents to help develop strategic approaches. Sixth one, development of curriculum and textbooks. And the last, one of the approaches that have been used is that often in the past, we have seen that in international projects, international surveys like TIMSS and PISA has been used like as a standard to evaluate the impact of the projects. Often when the big financial institutes like the IMF and the Asian Development Bank, when they try to evaluate projects, often they will refer to the results of TIMSS and PISA. And there is one project here, especially they argue that the use of TIMSS and PISA is actually not suitable to evaluate the impact of the project. And we should move towards the use of other innovative approaches to evaluate the impact of the international cooperation projects. Some general issues that have arisen in international cooperation. We will focus on two main ones. The first is reconciling internationalization versus localization. What we need here is that often in international cooperation projects, one of the main aims, especially, is to focus on the less developed countries and try to bring in international ideas to develop mathematics education in the low achieving countries. So internationalization actually means implies bringing in of new ideas, new trends and innovations into regions with low student achievement. But at the same time, we also realize that these new ideas and trends and innovations often do not, cannot be simply adopted into a country. There is a need to incorporate local ideas and local expertise in order to solve the challenges that arise from the international cooperation projects. So this is where there is also a suggestion that there should be more local expertise and local ideas to be incorporated into the international cooperation projects. Next is the problem of different cultures. What can we learn from different cultures? And as we all know, in international cooperation projects, different cultures meet. Sometimes more than 2 cultures meet in a project. And we also know that, acknowledge that knowledge flows both ways across different cultures. Differences in, there are also differences in mathematics language and terminologies and its relationship with culture. Communication between agents often bring along with them ideas from different cultures. The last point is that in international cooperation projects, the agents are often not all from the mathematics education community. So we have agents that come into the projects with the background of general education knowledge. And when they come into contact with experts who are from mathematics education, a lot of problems often arise. At the end of the conference, we decided to put in 3 proposals to extend our work in ICDME. The first one is to continue with our ongoing plan of publishing a monograph from the conference. The second is to plan for a face-to-face ICDME conference in 2023, which again, SCUBA under Professor Masami Soda has volunteered to organize. And we look at the possibility to expand ICDME to cover more areas of discussion for international cooperation in mathematics education. For example, cross-border cooperation, higher education, and accountability in international cooperation. And the last proposal is to conduct, this proposal came from Professor Masami Soda, who proposed that we conduct online activities to extend our work in ICDME. If Professor Masami has come on now, we can invite him to talk a little bit more about the online projects.
Unfortunately, I guess he mixed the time zones, so he's not with us for the moment.
Okay. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I shall stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Hock. So are there any questions from the audience, or maybe do you want to talk?
I see there are a lot of questions, but I will need some translation help so that we can understand some of the questions.
Yes, actually, for the moment, I just took some notes in French, so there hasn't been any questions in French. So you're welcome to open up your mic and so there is one hand by Fabrice. Fabrice, please.
So thank you very much for this talk. In the network of IREM, we address specifically colleagues with French language only, and it is already very difficult to foster collaboration. And my thinking is that it is already difficult in the French context, only with people from a lot of countries who speak French. And I guess the obstacle of the language, is it not an obstacle in your international collaboration? It is my first question. After I will have another one.
Can I quickly respond to this? I think language has always been an obstacle. As you know, all the 4 or 5 of us are not, what do you call, we are not first language English speakers. In the TSG 61, English is my second language. I think it is also for Masami, Soda, Arne, and Bernadette. So English is an obstacle, but we will try our best. For example, at the present moment, we are trying to come up with an edited book using articles or submissions from the papers from the conference, and reviewing of the papers is indeed a big challenge, right? Out of the so many countries, I think maybe only 20% or 30% are a bit familiar with the English language. I do agree with you. English is an obstacle, but I don't know whether I have any answers or
I guess
solutions.
In our French community, it is I guess there are not so many colleagues in our French language community who are speaking English. I realize that there are not so many people who are connected because the conference is in English, I guess. And but even inside our community where everybody can speak French, we have a lot of difficulties to foster all the kind of collaboration that you mentioned, that you have mentioned in your talk. And so I would like already to be able, that we would be able to foster such kind of collaborations in the French network, but it is already difficult. Maybe Viviane can, it is not a question, it is a reaction. Maybe Viviane can continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fabrice, and thank you, Hock, for your presentation. Of course, the language is an obstacle, but I think also, I am also on linguistic issues, but not in the same question, but I know to be very important, and I share your concern. But I think that when we are thinking of collaboration, in particular with a place where there is low student achievement, but more also with language that were not from the very beginning or from long designed to practice. For example, I think of mathematics because I am working in mathematics, but I think for other scientific or other kind of knowledge, I think there is something very important to develop is a work according to culture, linguistic issues, and how it can foster the development of knowledge in education. So my question is, how can we, do you think we can do this efficiently? So I give an example. In the Francophone community, we have collaboration with certain countries, and the GREMA group, for example, is very involved in this, but not only, and there are some work on how to deal with such kind of difficulties, not difficulties, it is also the weakness of such parts. So I think it is something very important, and maybe it is not necessarily a large number of countries, but some more near what happened really in education system to deal with. So I think this would be something very important, this question of how we developed knowledge in every domain, depending on the vernacular language, the motherhood language of the students. Because there are a lot of countries where the language of instruction is not the vernacular language of the students, and sometimes not also from the teachers.
So if I may rephrase, the question we Hock is about, if I understand correctly, Viviane, is the impact of the natural language of the learners and the teachers on the education of mathematics, and not only as an obstacle, but as well as the source of some epistemological understanding of the mathematics at stake. Do I understand correctly, Viviane?
Yes, you understand correctly. Thank you very much for this reformulation.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
No, the question is, how do you think a network as ICDME could address this question that I think is very important in international collaboration? So this was
the question of language. I think it's not easy for us to bring about a solution, an immediate solution to this problem. I think what is important is we need to bring the people together and try to understand the problems that they have. Of course, the language poses a big issue, because in less developed economies, their language often lacks the terminologies that is being used in the more developed countries. they don't have terminologies to express the problems specifically in mathematics, for example. But
Yes.
Yes, but if I may, sometimes this lacking this terminology might be seen as the source of some knowledge. For example, the ethnomathematics is trying to identify ways that people actually perform some tasks that, to our knowledge, require some mathematics and which are actually put into act, but not through the same words. So that reshuffles a bit the knowledge. I think that's what Vivian is trying to convey.
Vivian wants to say something. I think one of the ways to help the less developed countries would be actually for the more developed countries, the agents and those who are interested to go firsthand into the less developed countries and find out the problems and work together with the local experts to see the issues that are involved. I see Vivian's hand is up. You want to say something?
Yes, yes. I think this is something that is very important to develop. For example, there is a PhD that has been done in French in 2003, I think, and the title I translate in English is Appropriation of Mathematics in an African Language, the Yoruba. And the author, she tried to precisely enlighten this kind of a weakness that the language of the Yoruba can carry when you think of mathematics. So I think that this is something very important. And of course, there is not terminology, but when you want to choose terminology for these languages, you need to rely on what is in the language itself, in the culture itself. And this is very interesting to do this because it leads you to maybe question the choices that has been done in your own languages to name and denominate the mathematical concept. And this is not something which is transparent. I think we often think that it is, but indeed it is not. So this, I think, is a very interesting way of entering collaboration and also collaboration that I could name symmetrical collaboration on this kind of question, because we all bring the weakness and the obstacle of its own educational culture issues and so on. So this is, of course, it's not easy to do, but I think it's important in a reflection if we want to develop this kind of collaboration. Yeah, this is the point.
No.
Please, Arne. Yes, go ahead, Arne.
Hello. Yes, I have a comment because I have been working in several projects in Malawi, and of course, language is an issue locally because they have local languages, and the language of instruction in Malawi from grade 4 is English. But for us, the main issue is when we go in and collaborate in project, it's not the language itself as an instruction language that is the main problem for us, because when we started working and collaborating in Malawi, there was one person in Malawi who had a PhD in mathematics education. And now there are 5. And there was, I mean, if we want to develop research related to issue related to language, we need to develop people who can investigate what's the challenges related to the language in instruction. So in a way, we don't let this stop us up when we go in there, that there is issue with the language, but how can we learn more about that? We need people who can investigate the challenges in the language issues of instruction. So now, and that's part of the collaboration, to develop people who can also investigate what's the challenges in the local languages of instruction. So that's been our input to the collaboration, that we can support their own development of people who can actually investigate these challenges. So instead of making it a major issue before we start, we have actually kind of developed more competence locally that they can investigate those challenges related to the languages. So yeah, so that's just a comment.
Yeah, so you're advocating for actually strengthening the network or local network of researchers in pedagogy and didactics.
Yes, through collaboration, we can support development of local knowledge, in the sense so they can actually do research on the challenges related to their language issues and their own culture.
Thanks. Bernadette, you have something to say?
Hey, so I think just now I have to ask someone, and Arne in particular, to speak slowly, please.
Sorry.
Because I can imagine if some of our colleagues are here, so perhaps, and especially African people, so they have some trouble with English if it's not very slow, please. So,
Sorry, Bernadette.
so about collaboration, so, but thanks, Arne, no problem. So I think we have to guide, to think of our methods, because our colleagues, and especially, so I think in Africa, so if they can get some words, so that's difficult for us. And it seems to me, for our collaboration, we have to guide much more before special subject, before we have to not exactly guide them, so that's not the right word, but we have another type of research to guide, to think of, I think, and perhaps that's the main subject, the main subject, in order to think of what we can do. But it seems to me perhaps we can, perhaps it's possible, but we have to think of that before. And I thought of that when I was listening to our French friend. Another people who came, but perhaps she will be able to answer with my question. But what do our first so that's all now. Perhaps after I come back, if you have something to ask me, so don't. So it's possible if you have something to ask to me, but another people perhaps may intervene. Okay.
Merci Bernadette. Viviane, tu voulais intervenir?
Ouais.
Yeah, yes, it was just to say I completely agree with Anne that it is very important to develop a specialist in this kind of collaboration. And so the issues of having PhD students working on these issues is something very important. And my question is, but I know that it's a very difficult question. This network, which is elaborating ICDME, does this network will have possibility to get grant for such PhD? Because we know that this is a very, very important issue. We need grant. If we have no grant, there is nearly no possibility. It's very difficult. No possibility, it's too much, but it's very difficult to develop such kind of investigation and research. So this is a question, but I completely agree with Anne, what Anne said.
Fabrice, vas-y.
Yes, it was my second question, because you mentioned in your presentation the word project a lot of time, and my reflection is about is it a project with money, as Viviane has mentioned, or is it project without? Because in fact, it is difficult to foster some projects with money on these kind of questions. And of course, if we would have, it would be easy to make some research with the PhD students and so on, perhaps, and especially in some countries, I think about the French community in Africa. I am sure that there would be students who would be interested to make some kind of thesis, but if we haven't money to support them, it is difficult.
Bernadette, tu voulais reprendre la parole?
Perhaps something. It's so that's following my first remark. It seems to me we have to develop not pre-service, but pre-organizing, much more. For example, if we have something to organize in for our group, for our new group, so it seems to me we have to choose, to reflect, to much more before beginning something, before starting. But what do you think of that? So that when I see other kinds of collaboration, we discovered at the end of the collaboration, so what we could do at starting point. So we have to use that. But so that's what I mean. And when I think, so that's a question we Hock Sensei, because our Japanese friend is not here now, about what he would like to do with the special project. So perhaps that's a question to Hock Sensei. We need much more reflection, and it seems to me.
I'm not sure I really understand the question. Can you repeat?
So,
if I may rephrase, I think that what Bernadette is saying is that we need first to think and organize before actually putting into action plans. I don't know exactly what she means by that, but and then there was Fabrice who was asking, okay, so let's network, but with what type of money? So how can we found? Okay, there is a need to train local PhD in order to be able to tap into the local expertise, but with what sort of money?
At the present moment, we haven't reached a level where we can influence the sources of the money yet. But at the moment, for example, at the last conference, we were able to have 2 members of JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. There were 2 officers who presented papers, and their coming along to the conference is indeed a good sign that we are able to make contact with them. And so this will open up an avenue where we can have dialogue with these officers to find out what the agenda of these agencies are. Because today, there is so much need for financial resources. For example, I think today people would not think that matter education is the #1 priority, but there are also other priorities. For example, climate change is very important today. I think these agencies are not made especially for maths education, but they are made for a variety of global needs. And I think it is up to us to come together and put our point across to these agencies so that we can source for some financial aid to help the less developed countries.
Yeah, is mathematics really the issue? Arne, you were raising your hand?
Yes, I had a comment to the question about money in a sense, and it's related to what Hock said. And so I can talk just from my own experience that the project I have been collaborating in the south, in Africa, there have been money available, and they are available to agencies. But of course, you have to compete and write proposals and have partners and have good proposals. And mathematics education is normally not the only thing they support, but they do support development of education and also like global climate changes, as Hock is saying, like all those global challenges we are faced towards. So if you have good proposals and good partners, there are money from many international agencies. So there are possibilities, and then from this money you can then support PhDs and develop knowledge in the local countries. For instance, the project I had last round, there was like about 50 projects that got support from the Norwegian agencies for development aid. The 50 projects, and each of them were like €1.5 million. So it's possible to do something for that amount of money. So and there are similar in many countries. Money can be found if you have the right partners and the right projects. But I think for us, one of the issues is also to learn from each other's project, because there are many challenges when we do find a partner in a country and we do collaborate. So what's the best way run a project. What's a good way to run a project? Maybe not the best way, but a good way. And what can we learn? Learn from mistakes, learn from success. And so this is one of the motivation also, I think, in our group, that not only to share the knowledge and from collaboration, that we can actually all benefit from each other.
Hello.
Vas-y, Bernadette.
Oui. So I want to say two things. So I listened to Hock Sensei, to Arne Sensei, and I think so if many people could hear, they could not understand and discuss now. I think they need to read and to discuss and discuss one more time after that. So that's what I think when I heard Hock Sensei and Arne Sensei. It's impossible to ask now French people, so exceptions there are, but to discuss that. And we have to discuss. And we have to discuss. So just now, so I need to tell that, because after this meeting, we have to organize in our groups some discussions about this subject. We have to discuss once more the way, I do not know, but that's very important. If I think of GREMA, we need that. We need.
Merci Bernadette. Viviane, tu levais la main?
Yes. I would like to have a comment about what Anne said. I agree with you, Anne, that it would be very important to share how you managed to get this project for, I think you, for example, the project with Malawi. Where did you apply? How did you do? And of course, I think it's very important to have this kind of exchange and to try to find a way to get money. I must say that it is, from my experience, not so easy, because mathematics education is very often not considered as a priority for a reason. For many people, and I think also for those who are at policy level, for example, the linguistic issues are not important in mathematics. So it's more important to put the focus, for example, on the linguistic issues than to put the focus on mathematics. So I think that as a community interested in mathematical instruction, we need also to foster the necessity of this kind of work for mathematics education, because it is not the case that you just come with your curriculum in your own country and then you can transfer it to a country in the language of instruction, with in general, in some, not in general, but in some country is this language which is not the vernacular one. And I think it's the case in many countries around the world. So I think it's very important to share how you succeed, because I am very interested. We do a lot of projects very often to try to get money, to get support for PhD students, and it is not so easy to get money. But of course, when you succeed, you have a lot of money. So I agree completely with you, and then you can support PhD students and research. So I think maybe there are these 2 points: sharing your way you manage to get this money, and also maybe be able to let hear to the policymakers that there are this kind of problematic in international collaboration in mathematics also. And I am not sure that this is shared by many of the person who evaluate our project. I am not sure. So maybe I don't know how many projects in mathematics education were successful in the 50 that you mentioned, Anne, for example, in your intervention.
We have to list our problems.
I think it would have been very interesting if we have Masami Isoda-sensei with us today, because he has some experience about how to write proposals in order to get a grant of some funds for the project. One of the things, because I've been working with Masami Isoda-sensei, is that these big international organizations that have got the financial resources, their agendas often are not static. They are quite dynamic and they change with the times. And because I was working with Isoda-sensei, I managed to learn something from him, one of which is to write your proposals in a way so that it is easy for these institutions to offer you a grant for your projects. An example is that when Isoda-sensei started off the APEC project, the focus was on Japanese lesson study. But after 4 years, you cannot keep asking money for the same type of project. So they had to modify the aims of the project. So from lesson study, they moved on to natural disasters and emergencies. How do we create education to help people in national disasters and emergencies? And after another 4 years, they switched their team from natural disasters and emergencies to now the big idea in mathematics is about statistics and statistics and computational stats, right? Computational thinking and statistics and big data. So in order to try and write proposals, in order to get your proposal accepted, we have to be sensitive to the changing times and the changing agenda of these big institutions. So that, we have to align ourselves to this agenda of these big institutions in order they will be able to accept our proposal.
Thank you very much, Hock. So is it, I understand that the core of the project should remain focused in line, or shall we diverse our point of view in order to answer different needs of the society, or shall we somehow fake put just a sugar coating on our projects for them to be acceptable by institutions? It's a different issue to just change our point of view to what is at stake, or just put sugar coating in order for it to be acceptable for institution. It's not clear to me.
I don't think it's sugarcoating, but it's to change the focus of our projects. Right? It's still mathematics, for example, but then the focus of mathematics now becomes different from lesson study approaches. Now we are into big data and statistics, right? So the focus is still helping children learn, but the focus now is different because the agenda of these big institutions have also changed.
Thank you. Viviane?
Yes, thank you very much for your this point. Of course, this is an important issue. If we want money, we need to be aligned with what the global institution decide that would be the priority. We know this. And for example, in some countries, now neuroscience is more important than education, for example. For some policymakers, they put the focus on this, and it might be a little bit complicated if we want to work in such project, keeping the importance of mathematics education in the classroom, for example, which is a short example. And in any case, I think this is something problematic sometimes, because maybe this does not is in adequation with the need of those who are working in this project. So we know that it is not so easy to be able to do the things we consider that are relevant or necessary, or and fulfill the requirement of this project. So not at a so global level, but we can see this in some of our European projects, for example, Erasmus Plus project and so on. And I think this is something which is a little bit problematic. So maybe in a network as those we are beginning to develop, it could be interesting to also try to have an influence on this global institution, because this global institution, very often they are far from the ordinary life of people who are working with children or with students, even university students, every day working and fighting with this mathematics education. And so, of course, and I know that we have to do this. I agree that if we want money, we have to do this, but maybe it could be important to have this kind of reflection that they should also listen what are the needs from those who are doing this international collaboration. Something which would be not only up bottom, of course not only bottom up, but up bottom up or bottom up bottom, something like a circulation, because the experts are not necessarily those who are taking this decision in this global institution. Experts are also those who are working really in the fields, in everyday action. So maybe, I don't know, I think this is very ambitious, but maybe we could think of this in the agenda of developing such an important international network.
Okay.
Du passé, faisons table rase, debout, debout.
Bon. Yes. Yes.
Vas-y, Bernadette.
Yes. I like, in the same line, to say something about preparation, not only by the organizers, but also by the participants. I remember at the end of a project who, after 5 years, I could discover that the participants did not know really what was the project and what were the conditions and so on. And I think it's necessary more and more. I don't know the right expression, but more and more it's necessary. Participants, I speak about organizers and teachers. It's necessary they know the project, not only the around, but in the heart, and that seems very important. So, what do you think about that? Very often they know what they have to do, but that's not enough. Could you get my idea?
As for
Can
me,
you give an example?
Please.
Can you give an example, please? Okay.
So that was at the end of a project in Africa. After 5 years, perhaps I told, after 5 years of this project, I discovered that the participants didn't know anything about the financement, about who had to pay, for example, and so on. After 5 years, yes, and they discovered that when the project stopped, You understand? Oh, excuse me, I lost my voice. So that's just an example. We have to teach the organizers have to teach everyone who is included in the project. Not only the result, not only what they have to do.
Okay, so I'm not totally
Could you
sure I
catch?
understand.
Not only info. So.
Okay, but as for me, my experience as in Europe about projects building, sometimes these projects, they are competing against one another. They are on very similar lines, and you know that then on this subject only 1 out of 3 is going to emerge, for example, and then when it is selected, you run and run to make to actually realize the project, and even your yesterday competitors that were proposing a similar project, they don't know about your project. They still see themselves as competitors. So sometimes they are just the office next to yours, and so the way the projects are done today in a pretty competitive manner is really harming the community, in my opinion, because we see ourselves as competitors rather than cooperators. So. Just a minute, I've got some.
We Hock, could you understand what I meant?
Not really. can you say it in another way?
I can try. I think for someone who is engaged in a project about we are interested, so it's necessary he knows exactly the genesis of the project, and not only the genesis but the objectives, and not only realization. So that's just shortly what I mean. Okay.
I'm not quite sure about that actually, because we still don't have time to do the basic work. So doing the meta work around it, I'm not sure about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are other participants that we haven't heard about: Mangarika, Jamila, Mekhabi, Analobo.
Where is the list of participants, please?
Down there, you have participants.
Good morning.
Hello, Mangari.
Good morning. How are you?
Very fine, thank you.
I'm just beginning to follow the conference. I missed it.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
And who is here in the center?
c'était Mangarika.
No. The baby.
The baby is Mangarika.
Okay, are there other questions, or shall we end the session?
That's all? And so, if it is, so we have to ask some people to offer just one, not a conclusion, but just a word in order to orientate our questions and conclusions. But I mean, first of all, our questions. And as I said, perhaps at the beginning, I don't remember, perhaps we have to send another meeting following this one, but it's too early to organize, sure. But so that's a real question. So if someone.
Yes, so it's not to conclude, but in some sense it is, I try to answer. Among the things that we have discussed, I think there are two things that we could address or propose. Maybe we could have a session of ICDME online, which was a proposal where we could invite all those who are interested, concerning how to design an international project for collaboration, for example, in the case of the project that Anne, you present. And so maybe Anne and our colleague from Japan could, for example, present the way they did and the way it works and something like this. It could be, I think, interesting to have this kind of online seminar, so something rather practical. How do we do? And another one I think would be interesting. I think we have in there is a network which is developing with more francophone colleagues about the collaboration in multicultural and multilinguistic mathematics education. And of course, this has been already presented in Francophone seminar, but it might be interesting to have a presentation in a kind of in an international online seminar. So maybe this could be a way to first know from each other and learn how to do it. And I think it would be interesting because the first point is very more on the global side and how it can deal then with concrete work, because of course the project has been developed. I have seen a paper by Merci Kazima and Hanne Jacobson and a third author. And the second one is more something starting from the bottom, and collaboration that are working and developing from beginning by people sharing the same preoccupation and so on. So these are two ideas for international online seminar in ICDME, and maybe we have to think of the question of translation, because it is wonderful the work that Christian did, and thank you very much, Christian, because but I think it's rather hard to do this, but of course this was very, very useful for those who are not so fluent in English. But okay, these are two kind of proposal, because it seems to me that online international seminar is a way to create an international community around the world, able to share ideas. And it is not to say that everybody should collaborate with everybody. This is not the case. Of course, collaboration should always be in a smaller group with a focus interest. But sharing this kind of work might be interesting at an international level as a way to think of how we could develop collaboration in our own countries, focus, interest, and so on.
Hello. Christian, yes. So, as you know, or not, so we have the translation of Hock, and I think we can send so we can think if she sent to everyone or not. But if we do, we have to precise what you want about that. So, but we have to continue something, and I have to discuss that with, especially with Christian, with Viviane, and everyone, everyone in GREMA, and also inside our international conference, international, not conference, international group in Paris. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you once again, Hock Cheah, for this very interesting conference, and Arno Jacobson as well for these answers. I think it was an interesting talk. So next week we will hear Salimata Soumba Diarra from Sikasso in Mali, who is going to talk about APROMARS, the Association of Math Teachers in the Sikasso region. So this will be Friday, May the 6th. Donc le prochain téléséminaire sera le vendredi 6 mai et nous écouterons Salimata Soumba Diarra du lycée Monseigneur Didier de Monclos de Sikasso au Mali nous parler de l'association des professeurs de mathématiques de la région de Sikasso, APROMARS. Donc d'ici là, je vous souhaite un excellent mois d'avril et donc à bientôt. Au revoir.
So, and see you, we Hock Sensei. And I do not know if you are alone here now. Yes, I think so. Not only see you soon, but speak you soon. Okay.
Ah, il y a une
Thank you very
transcription en
much,
direct.
Christian. I think you have been a wonderful host, doing so many things at one time, being the host and also doing the translations immediately. I think it was a wonderful job we have done.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Goodbye, everybody.
Oh.